Income Tax 2020, Practice Problem 1, Presentation 32, Schedule C Business, Auto Expenses. Come in, relax with Income Tax 2020. Here we are in our Lacerte tax software. You don't need the Lacerte tax software to follow along, although I do think they have a 30-day free trial, so if you get access to a promo or demo version of it or any other tax software, could be a good tool to practice with. We here continuing on with our practice problem number 1, the comprehensive practice problem. First section, we entered the income items, then the above the line deductions, then the itemized deductions. Now we're looking at a Schedule C that we're going to be adding in here. Jumping on over to our Schedule C, we're imagining that we got the income statement from a client or our software. Then we put it into our worksheet here, marking off the accounts that we think we might need adjustments for based on just looking at those accounts and based on prior year adjustments. Then we're going to now go back into some of these items and make the adjustments. So at this point in time, we made one adjustment for the meals and entertainment for the 50% deductible portion. We're at the 58,186 at this point, and that ties out to the 58,186 down here. Now we're going to be looking at the auto. So what would happen at this point is we're going to ask the client, we're going to say, hey, look, last year with relation to the auto expenses, we took the mileage method. So you have 2,100 in here, but we didn't take the direct method last year. We did the mileage method. Do you want us to do that again this year? And that's what we would ask basically in our open items over here. We not only would ask that, but we want to be very specific about it. We'd say, hey, look, we used the mileage method last year. We're assuming that we want to use that again this year. And then we need, if we're going to use that method, the total miles driven as well as the business miles driven. We might then add, this is what you had last year for total miles and business miles, just as a reference for you to give us the information this year. We're going to assume the question was formatted that way. You might ask that question along with all the other stuff that basically you don't have up until that point in time, so you can kind of limit the amount of correspondence, so you're not going back and forth all the time. So they're going to tell us, yeah, we're going to use the mileage method we're imagining here, and we want 12,000 total miles, 70% of it is for business. And we're going to say, okay, can you support that in the event of an audit? Can you back up that information and whatnot? And they're going to say, yeah, okay. So we're going to use the 12,000 total miles, 70% business. So that means that we need to make an adjustment for this autos because this is basically the direct method that we got from our accounting system rather than using the mileage method. Now, one way you may want to do that is I might reverse this entirely first and then enter the auto expenses based on the mileage method second, instead of like entering the difference. So I like to reverse the entire thing to make it as clear as possible. So I'm going to say I'm going to remove this one. I'm going to say I'm going to take it down to 0 first. I'm going to add another account down here, which is going to be our tax adjustment. So I'm going to highlight this item, right click here, and insert another row. I'm going to insert, not a whole row, but those cells. Insert the cells, shift them down. And then I want to basically format paint from down here. I'm going to format paint this up here. And this I'm going to call a tax adjustment for auto. Auto. Is that how? Auto. We'll keep it at that. That'll then be the debit that I'm going to put up top. And so I'm going to put the debit here, and then I'm just going to reverse the entire thing, which is going to be that 2,100. I'm going to bring it down to 0 so that we have a clean slate to calculate the auto based on the mileage method. So I'm going to go down here and say, all right, this is starting at 0. And then I'm going to say that we're going to debit this one, and we're going to credit this one up top. We'll credit that one. So that brings it down to 0. So that means this is summing up the entire row. This is summing up basically up until we get to the tax adjustments. And then this is also summing up until we have the tax adjustments. So the difference between these two then are these two items here, the 2395, the 2395. And so now we have a 0 up top. We have a clean slate. I'm going to make this green. I'm going to greenify this instead of having it yellowified, because we want to, that means that that's the one we're working on. So I'm going to make it green to show that is the one that we are working on. So now that we have kind of a clean slate, I'm going to go back on over to our worksheet over here, and I'm going to adjust this auto expense. I'm going to go back on over, and I'm going to say, all right, what if I removed the auto from the date, just the direct data input here. I'm going to remove it from here. And now if I go back on over, I'm going to say now the bottom line in our auto is at that 60,286. So we line up there. So now I just make the auto expense based on the mileage method. So I'm going to use the mileage method for the auto. So I'm going to come over to this form 2106, and I'm going to say this is going to be going to the Schedule C, and activity is going to be the consulting. And within the vehicles, I'm going to say vehicle is used primarily by more than 5% owner. We're going to say yes, vehicle is available for off-duty use. I'm going to say it is. No other vehicle is available for personal use. I'm going to say that's not the case. No evidence to support your deduction. I'm not going to check that. And no written evidence to support your deduction. I'm going to keep that unchecked as well. Then we're going to have our description. I'm just going to be generic here and say truck. You should probably have a more specific description than that. Date placed in service. Now, if you had done this in the prior year and it's rolling over from the prior year, then it was probably in service last year if it's the same vehicle. So this stuff would be populating and rolling over into the current year most likely. So I'm going to say 0101, let's say 19, imagining it was in service last year too. And then the total miles that we had was 12,000, they said. Isn't that what they said on our little worksheet? Yeah, 12,000, 70% business. So I'm going to say this is going to be 12,000 times 0.7. Oh, they won't let me do the multiplication here. Let's pull out the trusty calculator. In QuickBooks, they let me multiply it like in the cell. So I get them mixed up sometimes. So 12,000 times 0.7. So that's going to be then, we're going to say 8400. And commuting, I'm going to say is the 1560. Now, if you had parking and tolls for the business use only, you can put there as well. I'm going to keep it at that. Going to pull this back on over to our worksheet. We could see the calculation now for the autos at the 4,830. If I go to the vehicle expense calculation here, we got the 12,000 business miles, 8,400. We took 70% business, and that's just calculating, basically saying that's the 8400 divided by the 12,000. And then we're taking that 8400 times the rate, which is 0.575. So we got the 8400 times the 0.575, and that's going to be the 4,830 that they're providing us at this point. So we'll keep that. Let's do that. Okay. So there we have it. Now I'm just going to make that same adjustment on our Excel worksheet so that we can just mark it off over here. And so now I'm going to say, I'm going to put this back on the books now that we have that blank slate at 0. It's at 0. And then the other side, we're going to debit it now. And the other side is going to go to the auto. And I can do the calculation again here just so I can kind of see it. It's going to be the, what did I say? It was 12,000 times 0.7 times 0.575, I think is the rate. That's the 4830. That's right. Of course it's right. I shouldn't even need to check. I know it's, anyway. So then we're going to post this out. So now we'll go ahead and post this out. There's something in the cell over here, so I'm going to double click on it. I'm going to go to the end of it and say plus, and then pick this one up. So I'm always going to hit plus on this side, and this is picking up those two cells now. So I reversed it down to 0, and then I put it back in at the 4830 so that we could see clearly the reversal and then what it was calculated to be instead of netting these two out. You could net these two out, which you could see here, the net difference 2730, but it's more difficult for someone else to kind of see that. If you put the notes up top this way, I think it's easier to see. And then I'm going to do the same down here on the auto. I'm going to double click on this, go to the end of it and say plus, and then we'll pick up that 4830 on the credit. And so there's going to be our net adjustments that we have here. So this is what the client gave us. Here's the adjustments that we have made, and here's the difference. And then you can put your notes on this side. We can say, let's note this. Let's put a note, new note, and I'm going to say reverse auto to 0 so we can use the mileage method. And then I'll put a note here, new note, auto expense using the mileage method. And you could put the calculation here, but the calculation is right there, isn't it? So it's right there, so we don't really need it. They can kind of see the calculation there. May even want to copy it. You can kind of copy it. Maybe I'll copy that. I'll make it easy. And then I'll put it here on that note. So we'll edit the note. So I'm going to go to that note again. Where is the note? And then I'll put this there. So there we have that. So they can see the calculation. Okay, so then I'm gonna get rid of that. And so now we're down here. Tax calculation to be the 55,456. 55,456. If I go back on over here, we're at 55,456. So we're tied out. And see how we'll do that basically one at a time there, so we can do it systematically. If we try to do everything at once, it's not difficult. Any one thing isn't difficult. But if you try to do it all at once, then you end up with just too much things at one time. You're trying to juggle too many balls at the same time. It's best to do it one at a time so that you don't have to start over from scratch if something goes wrong.